The Poetry Center bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
I think it's incredible the diversity of poems are here today. I can't take credit for it. The board can't take credit for it. It must be some kind of synchronicity in the universe. But Sean Webb comes to us today from Pennsylvania. He received an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop, and he apparently has survived along with Sharon. He was selected by Grace Paley to serve as Poet Laureate of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania in 2005. His work has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. He won the Tucson Festival of Books Literary Prize for Poetry, the Asheville Poetry Review William Matthews Poetry Prize, and the Gemini Magazine Poetry Open. His chapbook, The Constant Parades, was selected by Alpha Weaver and is published by Moonstone Arts, and his chapbook, What Cannot Stay Small Forever, is published by Finishing Line Press. Sean also has an extensive experience as a medical and scientific writer and editor. And if you are having trouble coming up with the right word for your next poem, ask him, because he currently works as a lexicographer. Sean Webb.
Congratulations to and to everyone, and thank you to the foundation. And it's great to learn a bit about Laura Boss, and I find that a couple people I know in Philadelphia knew Laura, and it's nice to be in Paterson. My only little thread I can think of is I have a good friend back in Salt Lake City whose father was a pharmacist in Paterson. He used to fill prescriptions for William Carlos Williams. So it's a wonderful little thread there. This first poem I wrote after I was visiting one of my favorite places, Cape Disappointment in Washington. But I wrote it for a woman I knew in high school who absolutely loves poetry, but she loves it mostly from a formal, metric, prosodic understanding of things, which is wonderful, but I was just kind of wanted to respond to that. It's called Disappointment Awaits. It's the title poem from my collection that I submitted. I am thinking of the scattered remains, broken timbers, and lost sailors lying beneath the turbulent surface of the Pacific, overlooked by lighthouses. We have tried to warn you, but it doesn't always work. We do our best. There are places where the sea winds have eaten through fence posts. There are breakwaters built against the ocean that need reinforced time and again. I live in a mind that has mitigated much of the danger nature poses. Cape Disappointment is a lovely place to visit. I sense more threat from the other visitors, out en masse, casting their thin lines into the unknown, clinging to a kind of certainty, a longing for knowing. Know that poets lift the voice of God. Give up your view of an underlying homogeneity of craft for the business of living. It is messy out here. Our feet get tangled and we stumble into something new. Maybe years later, I remember your bright and earnest face. Remember what promise you showed. You became so good at assembling the bones beneath the tiny beacons of warning lights where I keep foundering on the rocks. Thank you. And this is a poem called Immolation. I used to be a drunken poet many years ago, and I wrote this very recently. And I'm not a drunk, but it reflects a little bit of what it's like being a drunk. It's called Immolation. In the 4th century, the monk Feu, in protest of an illegitimate principality, swallowed incense chips and wrapped his body in oiled cloth. He set himself aflame and chanted while his body was consumed. Witnesses to that event were filled with grief and admiration. Hundreds of years later, during the Raskal, when the zealots of piety stood for purification of the Russian Orthodox faith, entire villages of old believers baptized themselves in fire. When I drink to quell the boredom, agitation, and fears of eternal torment, I hold steadfast to the unswerving certainty that everything is unbearable. Therefore, I stand alone, avoiding such fervor to let you know I mean business, as I am slowly consumed by joyless spirits of a vanishing and lonely God. And I'll read a couple more, but this one is a bit long, and I wrote this, it took about 15 years to write this. When I was in grad school, I was tasked with assessing some things in special collections to see if they were worth publishing. And one of the things I was assigned to look at were the diaries of a farmer named Elmer Box. And he wrote an entry every single day for 46 years and never conveyed a single emotion, anything about anything, even the days his kids were born, just their name and born. Except, at one point, he wrote that he went to the county fair and she was there. It's the only mystery in 46 years of entries. And I wanted to write about it for years, and then something came out about an abstract painting exhibit, and all the pieces fell together from that. We were asked to write something in response to that. It's called Fields. From 36,000 feet, the farms look like so much nothing. Then one field meets another and boundaries result, a communal mondrian laid over the curvature of earth. But there is more there in the stretches of earthen colors. I can only speculate on the crops and what they will feed. In the hours we pass over Iowa, nothing appears to happen. No movement is detected. The fields seem as if they have always been there, unchanged. I can't imagine life outside of the order that has been created in the lines. I turn back to the magazine in my lap and read an article about Pike's Market, which includes the requisite photo of someone throwing a fish into the arms of another. Back in Iowa in the last century, it was my job once to sit in the university's special collections and assess donated manuscripts for gold nuggets worthy of print. In the century before that, a man named Elmer Box began his diary. I don't know why he decided to start it. He said nothing special about that day, but it commenced. 47 years, an entry every day, 47 bound editions. Not a hint of sentiment. Each day a record of the weather, crops planted and harvested, fences fixed, halters mended. No mention of his wife, no sensual description of land, home, bed. The 3 days his children were born, their entries were as commonplace as the corn in the field. I tried to imagine Elmer tinkering in the barn in work boots and thinning hair, his brown hands working from the ends of his flannel shirt as the sun worked further into the mountain. A gas lamp illumining and shadowing stirring animals, water-plumped eaves drying and ticking in the morning, last night's mended halter being secured to a beast's body, dull steel turning out the soil, raised in long rows, Elmer winding his watch in blue dawn. Blackbirds everywhere, on barn and fences, on the plain, gray wooden house. Elmer figured against the clearing, turning the crop seeds back in, tilling dirt into uniform mounds as dark as the morning's coffee grounds. 47 years. I sat there for days, combing for one hint of an expressed life, one thread stitching his heart to another. I surveyed the lonely landscape like Zhivago until finally, a mention of going to the fair. Nothing special, no betrayal of a moment's joy, the proceedings mundane as sausage links, and then she was there. A brief glimpse of an interior life, an enemy, a love that got away. After years of taciturn cataloging of life's humdrum features, maybe it was time to open up. I read ahead, searching for clues. Would she turn up again? A 4th of July celebration? A sudden effusion of flowery words, bursting in a flourish of fireworks? I would like to say that tiny fissure blew his world open. That one small key in the lock turned, and his reticence undammed, but nothing followed. Volume after volume, I scrutinized the weather patterns of Iowa, logging of crop events, fall harvest set down by a leathery hand. His life so bound and rocky nothing could gain purchase. Year after year it went until one day it ended, and his son tied it up with the longest entry in the entire compilation, explaining with some measured emotion how Elmer dropped dead shoveling the car out in heavy snow. A fitting departure, a solitary act rife with futility. The snows of Iowa fill in the fields again and again. It couldn't possibly have been the man's intent to have a more profound effect on me than any art, any literature, any music I have encountered before or since. I spent the days trying to shake his ghost, but he was chained to me as I walked to my classes, sat at my typewriter, lied in bed with my wife. I was shocked by the brutal starkness, the complete abstraction in a very objective and concrete world. Nearly half a century committed to paper, only one loose thread, one mystery so shallow it dried in an instant. A lifelong exercise in stoic repressed communication. Encountering it desiccated my heart and made me believe in God just enough to believe in God's abandonment. Still on the plain, I returned my attention to the ground. Fewer farms now and the beginnings of mountains. The microscopic organisms growing uncontrollably. Thick clouds become thinner the closer they get, until the whiteness separates completely and what was there slips into the ether and there's nothing left to explain. Surely there is more than I see, interiors of fields and squares of houses, generations cycling through the seasons under the expansive field of blue sky. Occasionally a plane flying over, filled with distant lives, abstract and common as grains of fall wheat that culminate in an immense register of abundance. Thank you. I forget how hard that is to read. I haven't read that in a long time. And sorry that I introduced it and then explained the whole thing in the poem. But I forgot everything was in there. And I'll finish with this, just a short poem. It's called The Tao of Taos. I remember a hateful time in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a spirit no soft bed piled with colorful wool blankets could quell. The healing of Chimayo was an empty field I would not cross. I was living in the land of estrangement, bitter holdings clinging to my insides like dagger moths. How could I know years later I would be waiting for a breakfast to be served among young strangers in a small mountain town, listening to Billie Holiday sing from the past of the wonders of autumn in New York, alone with thoughts of my life's work, to move beyond forgiveness, to arrive at a place I do not suffer daily crucifixions.